हरिओम उपदेश सहस्री 18 श्लोक एक्शन वर्स नंबर 109 आदर्शस्तु यथा भासो मुखाकारस्य एव सः यथैवं प्रत्ययादर्शो यदा भासस्तदा ह्यहम्. Just as the reflection of a face which makes a mirror appear like it, is the face itself not different from the face, so the reflection of the self in the mirror of the ego, making it appear like the self, is the self, not different from the self. So the meaning of the sentence I am Brahman is reasonable. Ittevam pratipattisya sadasmiti च नान्यथा तत्त्वमित्युपदेशोऽपि द्वारा भावादनर्थकः. It is only in this way, that is when the reflection of the self is accepted, and in no other, that one knows that one is Brahman and that Brahman is oneself. Otherwise the teaching that the word also becomes useless in the meaning of a medium, the reflection of the self. श्रोतुस्स्यादुपदेशश्चेदर्थवत्वं तथा भवेत् अध्यक्षस्य न चेदिष्टं श्रोतृत्वं कस्य तद्भवेत्. Teaching becomes useful if it is meant for a hearer, that is the aspirant. Who will be the hearer if the witness is not? अध्यक्षस्य समीपे स्यात् बुद्धेरेवेति चेन्मतं न तत्कृतोपकारोऽस्ति काष्ठाद्यद्वन्न कल्प्यते. If you are of the opinion that the intellect proximate to the witness, which only exists and is actionless, is the hearer, it cannot be regarded as deriving any benefit from the witness, as from a piece of wood. बुद्धौ चेत् तत्कृतः कश्चिन्नन्वेवं परिणामिता आभासेऽपि च को दोषः सति श्रुत्याद्यनुग्रहे. But the witness must be admitted to be subject to change, if there be any benefit rendered by it to the intellect. What harm is there if the reflection of the self is accepted as it is supported by the Shrutis and Smrutis? आभासे परिणामश्चेन्न रज्ज्वादिनिभत्ववत् सर्पादेश्च तथा वोचमादर्शे च मुखत्ववत्. If you say that there will be changes in the self in case the reflection is accepted, we say no, for we have already said that the reflection of consciousness in the intellect is an unreality, like a snake appearing to be a rope, and like the reflection of a face in a mirror appearing to be the face itself. नात्मा भासस्त्वसिद्धिश्चेदात्मनो ग्रहणात् पृथक् मुखादेश्च पृथक् सिद्धिरिह त्वन्योन्यसंश्रयः. अध्यक्षस्य पृथक् सिद्धा वाभासस्य तदीयता आभासस्य तदीयत्वे अध्यक्षव्यतिरिक्तता. Objection: no, there will be the fallacy of reciprocal dependence. Here, as the knowledge of the reflection depends on that of the self, and the knowledge of the self depends on that of the reflection, but it is not so in the case of the face, etc., and their reflection, as the face, etc., are always known dependent on their reflections. The reflection may be said to belong to the face, to the self, if the latter be known to have an independent existence. Again, the self may have an independent existence if the reflection belongs to it. The fallacy spoken above. नैवं स्वप्ने पृथक् सिद्धेः प्रत्ययस्य दृशेस्तथा रथादेस्तत्र शून्यत्वात् प्रत्ययस्यात्मना ग्रहः. It is not so. The intellect is an object of the self. Pure consciousness in dream, the self must therefore be admitted to have an existence independent of that of its reflection. For the intellect and the self are known to exist independent of each other in dream, like the face and its reflection. As the self then illumines the modifications of the intellect in the forms of objects such as chariots, etc., though they are not present in that state. अवगत्या हि संव्याप्तः प्रत्ययो विषयाकृतिः जायते स यदाकारः स बाह्यो विषयो मतः कर्मेप्सिततमत्वात् स तद्वान् कार्ये नियुज्यते आकारो यत् चाप्येत करणं तदिहोच्यते. The pervaded by consciousness, mental modifications in the forms of objects come into existence. External objects are what impart their forms to these modifications. The most desirable of all things on the part of the agent. These external objects are called objects of this action. One having such a desire is enjoined to perform actions. The mental modifications in which the forms of external objects are present are called the instruments of his knowledge of objects. The self is shown in the waking state to be distinct from the intellect as it is shown to be so in dream. यदाभासेन संव्याप्तः संज्ञातेति निगद्यते त्रयमेतद्विविच्यात्र यो जानाति स आत्मवित्. The ego, which is pervaded by the reflection of consciousness, is called the knower of the agent of the action of knowing. One who knows oneself, the witness to be distinct from all these three, the agent, the object, and the instrument, is a real knower of the self. सम्यक् संशयमित्युक्तः प्रत्यया व्यभिचारिणः एकैवावगतिस्तेषु भेदस्तु प्रत्ययार्पितः. The modifications of the intellect called right knowledge, doubtful knowledge, and false knowledge deviate from their existence. There is one and the same consciousness, pure consciousness, the self, in all of them. The differences are due to the modifications. आधिभेदाद्यथा भेदो मणेरवगतेस्तथा अशुद्धिः परिणामश्च सर्वं प्रत्ययसंश्रयात्. Just as a jewel differs in color owing to the proximity of colored things, so consciousness differs according to different modifications of the mind superimposed on it. Impurities and changes in the self are all due to its connection with these modifications. प्रथनं ग्रहणं सिद्धिः प्रत्ययानामिहान्यतः अपरोक्षात् तदेवोक्तमनुमानं प्रदीपवत्. The modifications of the intellect are manifested, known and endowed with existence by another, that is the self which is immediately known and different from them. It is inferred with the help of the example of a lamp. किमन्यद्ग्राहयेत् कश्चित् प्रमाणेन तु केनचित् विनैव तु प्रमाणेन निवृत्त्यान्यस्य शेषतः. Does one make another accept the self by means of a positive evidence, or without one by merely negating the non-self and leaving over the self only? Self is proved by positive evidence, but it is refuted that, and it proves that self is proved by negative evidence only. शब्देनैव प्रमाणेन निवृत्तिश्चेदिहोच्यते अध्यक्षस्य प्रसिद्धत्वात् शून्यतैव प्रसज्यते. The possibility of a void comes in owing to the witness being unknown by any other evidence. If the non-self be meant to be negated by means of the evidence of words, the idea is that the self and the non-self being contradictory to each other, the former is left over when the latter is negated. चेतनस्त्वं कथं देह इति चेन्ना प्रसिद्धितः चेतनस्यान्यतस्सिद्धावेवं स्यादन्यहानतः. Objection: You are a conscious being. How can you be the body? The idea is that the self and the non-self being contradictory to each other, the former is left over when the latter is negated. Reply: It cannot be so proved, as the self is not known from any other evidence. It might be proved by negating the non-self if pure consciousness were known to exist through an evidence. अध्यक्षस्वयमस्त्येव चेतनस्य परोक्षतः तुल्य एवं प्रबोधस्यादन्यस्य सत्त्ववादिनः. Objection: The self is self-existent as pure consciousness is immediately known. Reply: The knowledge of the self according to you then becomes similar as regards the want of an evidence to that of the void assumed by the nihilist. अहमज्ञासी अष्टं चेदमिति लोकस्मृतेर्यः करणं कर्म कर्ता च सिद्धास्त्वेकक्षणे किल. Objection: That the agent, the object and instrument are known to exist simultaneously is proved by memory. When one says, I knew it, the objector tries to prove the independent existence of the self by showing that there must be a self-evident principle through which the three things are known simultaneously, and that is the self. प्रामाण्येऽपि स्मृते शैघ्र्यात् यौगपद्यं विभाव्यते क्रमेण ग्रहणं पूर्वं स्मृतेः पश्चात् तथैव च. Though memory is the right evidence, simultaneity is a misconception due to quick perception. So they were perceived before one after another and afterwards remembered in the same way. अज्ञाशिष्यमिदं मां चेत्यपेक्षा जायते ध्रुवं विशेषोपेक्षते यत्र तत्र नैवैककालता. Relative to and characteristically different from each other, the things denoted by the words it and myself in the sentence I knew it and myself cannot be the objects of simultaneous perception. आत्मनो ग्रहणे चापि त्रयाणामिह संभवात् आत्मन्यासक्तकर्तृत्वं न स्यात् करणकर्मणोः. Three things, namely an agent, an instrument, and an object, are necessary in the perception of each one of the knower, knowledge, and the known, and also in the perception of each one of the agent, the instrument, and the object. Hence, there arises a regressus ad infinitum with respect to each of them. And in order to avoid a regressus ad infinitum, it cannot be said that each of these three things will prove its own existence, because the agency of the agent exhausted in proving its own existence will not be available to prove that of the instrument and the object at the same time. व्याप्तुमिष्टं च यत्कर्तुः क्रियया कर्म तत्स्मृतम् अतो हि कर्तृतन्त्रत्वं तस्येष्टं नान्यतन्त्रता. What is desired to be governed by the action of an agent is an object of that action. The object therefore depends on the agent and so on, the self which is other than it. शब्दाद्वा नुमितेर्वापि प्रमाणाद्वा ततोऽन्यतः सिद्धिः सर्वपदार्थानां स्यादज्ञं प्रति नान्यथा. It is only through evidences such as words, the Shruti, inference, etc., example sense perception, and in no other way that all things become known to those who do not know them. अध्यक्षस्यापि सिद्धिः स्यात् प्रमाणेन विनैव वा विना स्वस्य प्रसिद्धिस्तु ज्ञानं प्रत्युपयुज्यते. Is the self also, like the non-self, substantiated by means of an evidence or not? Though the self itself is independent of evidence, evidence is necessary in order to know it. तस्यैवाज्ञत्वमिष्टं चेत् ज्ञानत्वेऽन्यामतिर्भवेत् अन्यस्यैवाज्ञतायां च तद्विज्ञाने ध्रुवा भवेत्. If the conscious self itself is taken to be ignorant, an evidence is necessary. In both the cases, therefore, a positive evidence is necessary, in order that it may know itself to be so. It is surely necessary in knowing the self if one, that is the ego, other than it, be regarded as ignorant. ज्ञातता स्वात्मलाभो वा सिद्धिः स्यादन्यदेव वा ज्ञातत्वेनन्तरोक्तौ च त्वं पक्षौ संस्मर्तुमर्हसि. सिद्धिः स्यात् स्वात्मलाभश्चेद्यत्नस्तत्र निरर्थकः सर्वलोकप्रसिद्धत्वात् स्वहेतुभ्यस्तु वस्तुनः. Does substantiation mean being known, being endowed with existence, or anything else? You should remember the two alternatives spoken of in the previous verse if it means being known. As it is well known that all things come to existence from their cause, no effect by way of the application of an evidence. Even a negative evidence upheld by the objector is not necessary. So this alternative is refuted. Is necessary for substantiation. ज्ञानज्ञेयादिवादे तस्सिद्धिर्ज्ञानत्वमुच्यते अध्यक्षाध्यक्षयोः सिद्धिर्ज्ञेयत्वं नात्मलाभता. Substantiation therefore means being known, according to the doctrine in which the knower, knowing and the known are admitted. In the case of both the witness and the witnessed, it denotes being known and not endowed with existence. स्पष्टत्वं कर्मकर्त्रादेः सिद्धिता यदि कल्प्यते. स्पष्टता स्पष्टते स्याता मन्यस्यैव न चात्मनः. It is assumed by the Bhattas that the distinctness of the agent, the object, etc. is what is substantiation. We say that there can be distinctness when the self is reflected in the intellect, etc., and indistinctness with respect to the other, that is the witness only, but not the agent, because the agent, the object, etc. are non-conscious by nature. अद्रष्टुर्नैव चान्धस्य स्पष्टीभावो घटस्य तु कर्त्रादे स्पष्टतेष्टा चेत् द्रष्टृताध्यक्षकर्तृता. There is no distinctness of a jar to a blind man having no power of vision. It is nothing more than the jar being known. Therefore, substantiation does not mean distinctness. If, however, they, the Bhattas, want to predicate distinctness about the agent, etc., they must admit that knowingness belongs to the self, different from the agent. अनुभूतेः किमन्यस्मिन् स्यात् तत्रापेक्षया वद. अनुभवितरिष्टा स्यात् सोऽप्यनुभूतिरेव नः. Please tell us, the idealists, what benefit you derive by holding that knowledge depends on other things. If it is contended that dependence of knowledge on the knower is desirable, we reply that the knower also, according to us, is nothing but knowledge. अभिन्नोऽपि हि बुद्ध्यात्मा विपर्यासितदर्शनैः ग्राह्यग्राहकसंवेत्ते भेदवानिव लक्ष्यते. The intellect itself, though indivisible, is looked upon by deluded people as consisting of the divisions of the knower, knowing, and the known. भूतिर्येषां क्रिया सैव कारकं सैव चोच्यते. सत्वं नाशित्वमस्याश्चेत् सकर्तृत्वं तथेष्यताम्. Actions, agents, etc. consist, according to us, idealists, of knowledge only. We must accept an agent of this knowledge if you admit its existence and destruction every moment. न कश्चित् चेष्यते धर्म इति चेत् पक्षहानता नन्वस्तित्वादयो धर्मानस्तित्वादिनिवृत्तयः न भूतेस्तर्हि नाशित्वं स्वालक्षण्यं मतं हि ते. Your own conclusion is given up if you do not admit any quality belonging to knowledge, such as existence and destruction every moment. Objection: the qualities of existence, etc., are nothing but the negation of their non-existence, and so on. Reply: even then, knowledge cannot be liable to destruction every moment, as it is self-existent and known by itself. In being born and known by itself, it requires more than one moment. It cannot therefore be called momentary, as it is self-existent and known by itself according to you. स्वलक्षणावधिर्नाशो नाशो नाशनिवृत्तिता अघोरसत्वं गोत्वं तेन तु तद्गोत्वलक्षणम्. Destruction has for its ultimate limit something which is self-existent. The appearance and disappearance of things are impossible on account of the absence of a permanent entity, according to you, which must be their ultimate limit. Existence and destruction are therefore not possible in your philosophy. You say that destruction being impossible, non-destruction also is so. So destruction is the negation of non-destruction. A cow is defined according to you as the non-existence of a non-cow. It cannot be the definition of a cow. The definition of a cow. क्षणवाच्योऽपि योऽर्थः स्यात् सोऽप्यन्याभाव एव ते. Things denoted by the word momentary are also, according to you, only the negation of things that are non-momentary. You have therefore to accept a permanent real entity. भेदाभावेऽप्यभावस्य भेदो नामभिरिष्यते नामभेदैरनेकत्वमेकस्य स्यात् कथं तव. The idealists, as there cannot be any difference in non-existence. The idealist means to say that his negation is not that of a reality. Non-existence differences are due to names only. Reply: please tell me how there can be manyness in one indivisible non-existence due only to different names. अपोहो यदि भिन्नानां वृत्तिस्तस्य कथं गवी नाभावा भेदकाः सर्वे विशेषा वा कथंचन. How? For there is no limit to the number of things denoted by the word non-cow. All of them cannot therefore be known, so a cow cannot be defined. How can the negation of a non-cow denote a cow, if by the word negation the negation of different things is meant? Again, no negation. Example, the negation of a horse or that of a goat does not distinguish a cow from either of them. No negation distinguishes one thing from another, nor can special properties do it. Example, hornlessness. नामजात्यादयो यद्वत् संविद्यस्ते विशेषतः. Just as names species, etc., do not qualify knowledge according to you, as it has no special properties. So, the negation of a non cow, hornlessness, etc., do not qualify a cow. प्रत्यक्षमनुमानं वा व्यवहारे यदिच्छसि क्रियाकारकभेदैस्तदभ्युपेयं ध्रुवं भवेत्. You have to admit difference as you have to accept sense perception and inference consisting of actions, agents and so on in everyday life. तस्मान्नीलं तथा पीतं घटादिर्वा विशेषणं संविदस्तदुपेयं स्याद्येन चाप्यनुभूयते. Entities qualifying knowledge such as jars, blue, yellow, etc., and all the knower by which these are known must be accepted. रूपादीनां यथान्यस्याद् ग्राह्यत्वाद् ग्राहकस्तथा प्रत्ययस्तत्तथान्यस्याद् व्यञ्जकत्वात् प्रदीपवत्. In addition to knowledge, the knower and the known also must be accepted. Just as the perceiver is different from colors, etc., which are perceivable, so the knower, the self, is different from the modifications of the intellect, which are knowable. Again, just as a lamp revealing things is different from them, so the knower is different from things known. अध्यक्षस्य दृशे कीदृक् सम्बन्धः सम्भविष्यति अध्यक्षेण तु दृश्येन मुक्त्वान्यो द्रष्टुर्दृश्यताम्. अध्यक्षेण कृता दृष्टिर्दृश्यं व्याप्नोत्यथापि वा नित्याध्यक्षकृतः कश्चिदुपकारो भवेत् धियाम्. What other relation except that of the seer and the seen can there be between the self, the witness, and the modifications of the intellect witnessed by it? Question. Does the consciousness of the self pervade the modifications really or apparently? Real pervasion is impossible as the self is changeless. Answer. If apparently, the eternal self must be of the same utility to the intellect. Sachoktastat-tannibhatvam prag samvyaptischa ghataadishu yatha lokadi samvyaptir vyanjakatvadhiyastatha. It has been said before, the self is thus related to external objects through its reflection, that the benefit derived from the proximity of the self by the intellect is that it appears conscious like the former, being a revealer, the intellect, pervading objects like light and so on, pervading jars, etc. आलोकस्थो घटो यद्वद्बुद्ध्यारूढो भवेत् तथा धीव्याप्ति स्यात् घटारोहो धियो व्याप्तौ क्रमो भवेत्. Just as a jar placed in the sun may be said to be mounted on light, so an object in the intellect may be said to be mounted on it. Being mounted is nothing but being pervaded by the intellect. Objects become pervaded by the intellect one after another. पूर्वं स्यात् प्रत्ययः व्याप्तिस्ततो नुग्रहचात्मनः कृत्स्नाध्यक्षस्य नो युक्तः कालाकाशादिवत् क्रमः. The intellect pervades an object and assumes its form. When the object is revealed through the help, that is, the reflection of the self. Like time and space, the all pervading self can have no order or succession in pervading objects. विषयग्रहणं यस्य कारणापेक्षया भवेत् सत्येवं ग्राह्यशेषे च परिणामे सचित्तवत्. A thing like the intellect that depends on the agent, etc., is pervading its objects and does not pervade all objects at the same time. Some being always left unpervaded is liable to transformation. अध्यक्षोऽहमिति ज्ञानं बुद्धेरेव विनिश्चयः नाध्यक्षस्य विशेषत्वान्न तस्यास्ति परो यतः. It is to the intellect and not to the self, which is immutable, that the knowledge I am Brahman belongs. Moreover, the self is changeless because it has no other witness. It is only changeful things that can have a witness. If a witness of the self is assumed, there will be a regressus ad infinitum. कर्त्रा चेदहमित्येव मनुभूयेत मुक्तता सुखदुःखविनिर्मुखो नाहं कर्तरि युज्यते. If the agent, the ego, were to feel I am liberated, freedom from pain and pleasure would not be reasonable. With respect to it, liberation, the result, apparently belongs to the self. For an agent is always connected with pain and pleasure. बाध्यते प्रत्ययेनेह विवेकेनाविवेकवान् देहादावभिमानोत्थो दुःखीति प्रत्ययो ध्रुवम् कुण्डली प्रत्ययो यद्वत् प्रत्यगात्माभिमानिनः विपर्यासे सदन्तं स्यात् प्रमाणस्य प्रमाणतः. The wrong knowledge that one is happy or unhappy due to one's identification with the body, etc., like the pleasure or sorrow due to the possession or loss of an earring, is surely negated by the right knowledge that one is pure consciousness, an evidence becoming non-evidence. Everything will end in non-existence in the reverse case, where wrong knowledge is wrong knowledge to negate right knowledge. दाहच्छेदविनाशेषु दुःखित्वं नान्यथात्मनः नैव यन्यस्य दाहादावन्यो दुःखी भवेत् क्वचित्. One feels pain when one's body gets burnt, cut or destroyed, because one identifies oneself with it. Otherwise, the self, which is different from the body, is never pained, owing to the being, burns, etc. In one man, another is not pained. अस्पर्शत्वाददेहत्वान्नाहं दाह्यो यतः सदा तस्मान् मिथ्याभिमानोत्थं मृते पुत्रे मृतिर्यथा. As I am not touched by anything and do not possess a body, I am never susceptible of being burnt. Pain arises from the wrong notion due to a false identification with the body. like the wrong motion of one being dead at the death of one's son. कुण्डल्यहमिति एतद्बाध्ये तैव विवेकिना दुःखीति प्रत्ययस्तद्वत् केवलाहं धिया सह. Just as the wrong notion, I possess an earring, is removed when the right knowledge, that is, the earring is a piece of gold having no connection with a man. Right knowledge regarding it arises. So the false consciousness, I am unhappy, is negated by the right knowledge, I am pure Brahman. सिद्धे दुःखित्व इष्टं स्यात् तच्छक्तिश्छन्दसात्मनः मिथ्याभिमानतो दुःखी तेनार्थापादनक्षमः. The self might be freely imagined to have the potentiality of pain in it if it were proved to possess pain at all. One's identification with the body, etc., is the cause of the pain felt and is responsible for the idea of such a potentiality existing in it. अस्पर्शोऽपि यथा स्पर्शमचलश्चलनादि च अविवेकात् तथा दुःखं मानसं चात्मनीक्षते. Just as due to indiscrimination, touch and movement are felt to be in the self, which is devoid of them, so mental pain is also felt to be in it, owing to the same reason. विवेकात्मधिया दुःखं नुद्यते चलनादिवत् अविवेकस्वभावेन मनो गच्छत्यनिच्छतः तदानुदृश्यते दुःखं नैश्चल्येनैव तस्य तत् प्रत्यगात्मनि तस्मात् तद् दुःखं नैवोपपद्यते. The pain due to one's identification with the subtle body comes to an end like movements, etc., on one's having the discriminating knowledge that one is the innermost self, coming to an end when one knows that one is different from the gross body. Unhappiness is seen in one when one's mind roams against one's will on account of ignorance, but it is not seen in one when the mind is at rest. It is therefore not reasonable that unhappiness is in the innermost self. त्वं सतोस्तुल्यनीडत्वा नीलाश्ववदिदं भवेत्. The saying, thou art that thou art. The saying that thou art therefore implies an indivisible reality, self Brahman. The words thou and that expressing the same reality indirectly, like the words blue and horse in the sentence. The example is meant to imply an indivisible thing and not a qualified one. It is a blue horse. निर्दुःखवाचिना योगात् त्वं शब्दस्य तदर्थता प्रत्यगात्माभिधानेन तत्शब्दस्य द्युतेस्तथा. The word thou comes to mean one free from pain on account of its being used in the same predicament with the word that, which means one eternally devoid of pain, similarly used in the same connection with the word thou, meaning the innermost self, which is directly known. The word that also comes to mean a thing directly known. दशमस्त्वमसीत्येवं वाक्यं स्यात् प्रत्यगात्मनि. The sentence that thou art produces the immediate knowledge, the self Brahman, like the saying, you are the tenth. स्वार्थस्य ह्यप्रहाणेन विशिष्टार्थसमर्पकौ प्रत्यगात्मावगत्यन्तो नान्योऽर्थोऽर्थाद्विरोध्यतः. Without giving up their own meanings, direct meanings, the words that and thou deliver by implication a special one, resulting in the knowledge of self Brahman. The direct meaning of the word thou is pure consciousness with the intellect and the reflection of consciousness in it. The direct meaning of the word that is pure consciousness with Maya, primeval ignorance, and the reflection of consciousness in it, of being indivisible and of the nature of bliss only, self Brahman, a special one, resulting in the knowledge of self Brahman. They do not express any other meaning contrary to it, that is one connected with or qualified by anything else. नवबुद्ध्यपहाराद्धि स्वात्मानं दशपूरणम् अपश्यन् ज्ञातुमेवेच्छेत् स्वमात्मानं जनस्तथा अविद्याबद्धचक्षुष्त्वात् कामापहृतधिः सदा विविक्तं दृशिमात्मानं नेक्षते दशमं यथा. Just as misled by the number 9, the boy did not know the truth and himself and wanted to know himself, so one does not see one's own self, the witness, though detached from the non-self and self-evident, on account of one's eyes being covered by ignorance and intellect captivated by desires. दशमस्त्वमसीत्येवं तत्त्वमस्यादिवाक्यतः स्वमात्मानं विजानाति कृत्स्नान्तःकरणे क्षणम्. One knows one's own self, the witness of the intellect, including the ego, and all its modifications from sentences such as that thou art, like the boy who knew himself from the sentence, you are the tenth. Idam purvamidam paschat padam vakyam bhavediti अन्वय व्यतिरेकाभ्यां ततो वाक्यार्थबोधनम्. वाक्ये हि श्रूयमाणानां पदानामर्थसंस्मृतिः नियमो नैव वेदेऽस्ति पदसाङ्गत्यमर्थतः. The understanding of sentences is possible on the knowledge of the implied meaning of the words after it has been ascertained by the method of. There is the understanding of the meaning of the word thou to be the meaning of the word that. Agreement. Is possible on the knowledge of the implied meaning of the words after it has been ascertained by the method of agreement and contrariety. Which words should be placed first and which next? In construing sentences, we place the words having known meanings, I, thou, etc. first, and that, Brahman, etc. next, which have unknown meanings. For the order of words in Vedic sentences follows. In the Vedic statements, oblation should be offered to fire, barley gruel should be cooked. Though offering of oblations precedes It is done next, for the offering must be made with the cooked gruel. Such is the case with the words that and thou in the sentence thou that art Tatvamasi. How one is Brahman. Vedic sentences follows the meaning of the sentence. No rule about the order of remembering the meanings of word is in sentences holds good in the Vedas. यदा नित्येषु वाक्येषु पदार्थस्तु विविच्यते वाक्यार्थज्ञानसङ्क्रान्ते तदा प्रश्नो नियुज्यते. The question, how one is Brahman, is out of place when the meanings of the words in sentences that thou art, having fixed meanings, are made clear by the method of agreement and contrariety, in order that the meanings of sentences may become comprehended. Anvaya व्यतिरेकोक्ति पदार्थस्मरणायतु स्मृत्यभावेन वाक्यार्थो ज्ञातुं शक्यो हि केनचित्. The method of agreement and contrariety is spoken of in order that one may be acquainted with the implied meanings of words. For no one can know the meaning of a sentence without knowing the meanings of the words in it. तत्त्वमस्यादिवाक्येषु त्वं पदार्था विवेकतः व्यज्यते नैव वाक्यार्थो नित्यमुक्तोऽहमित्यतः. अन्वयव्यतिरेकोक्तिस्तद्विवेकाय नान्यथा त्वं पदार्थविवेके हि पाणावर्पितबिल्ववत्. वाक्यार्थो व्यज्यते चैवं केवलोऽहं पदार्थतः दुःखी ते तदपोहेन प्रत्यगात्मविनिश्चयात्. The meaning of the sentence like thou art that is one is Brahman ever free does not become manifest on account of the non-discrimination of the implied meaning of the word thou. It is for the purpose of discriminating the meaning of that word and for no other purpose that the method of agreement and contrariety has been described. For when the meaning of the word thou is discriminated by the negation of the ego, subject to unhappiness from the meaning, the direct meaning of the word I, one becomes perfectly sure of the nature of the innermost self. And then the meaning of the sentence, namely one pure consciousness, becomes manifest like an eagle marmalose fruit placed on one's palm. तत्रैवं सम्भवत्यर्थे श्रुतः नाश्रुतार्थधीः नैव कल्पयितुं युक्ता पदवाक्यार्थकोविदैः. Those who are well versed in the meanings of words and sentences should not, therefore, assume a meaning. Action, example, the reiteration of the idea I am Brahman as the direct means to right knowledge, causing the cessation of ignorance, which is not in accordance with the Shruti, and give up what is in them. For right knowledge of self Brahman arising from the sentences like thou art that and negating ignorance, and give what is in them. For this explanation, the sentence that thou art is thus possible. प्रत्यक्षादीनिबाधेरन् कृष्णलादिषु पाकवत् अक्षजादीनिभैरेतैः कथं स्याद् वाक्यबाधिनम्. Objection. The knowledge I am Brahman is contradicted by sense perception. On the part of those who hold that the idea I am Brahman is enjoined to be repeated for self-purification. For sense perception, according to the objector, proves agency to be in the self, etc., like the cooking of gold particles. Gold particles are boiled in order to sanctify them for use in certain sacrifices. Reply. How can that knowledge be contradicted? Evidently, they gold particles do not become soft. So the word cooking implies a contradiction. By these, which are evidences only apparently. दुःख्यस्मीति सति ज्ञाने निर्दुःखीति न जायते प्रत्यक्षादिनिभत्वेपि वाक्यान्न व्यभिचारतः. Objection. The knowledge that one is devoid of unhappiness does not arise from the sentence, as long one feels unhappy and so on from one's birth. The knowledge I am free from unhappiness, that is, I am Brahman, which comes latter, cannot therefore negate the previous ones. As one feels that one is unhappy, though the feeling of unhappiness may be due to sense perception, etc., which are all fallacious. Reply. We say no, for there are exceptions. Example, one feels that the sky is blue from one's birth, but one acquires the knowledge later that it is free from blueness when one is told so. स्वप्ने दुःख्यहमध्यासं दाहच्छेदादिहेतुतः तत्कालभाविभिर्वाक्यैर्न बाधः क्रियते यदि समाप्तेस्तर्हि दुःखस्य प्राक्च तद्बाधयिष्यतां न हि दुःखस्य सन्तानो भ्रान्तेर्वा दृश्यते क्वचित्. Reply. Continued. I felt miserable on account of burns, cuts, etc. in dream and was freed. Pains, etc. are therefore not the properties of the self, and was freed from pain through the teaching imparted to me by a man of knowledge in that state. Even if it be contended that the teaching in dream negates no pain, still pain, etc. cannot be regarded as belonging to the self, for the absence of pain is there both before and after it is experienced, delusion or pain being never unceasing. प्रत्यगात्मन आत्मत्वं दुःख्यस्मीत्यस्य बाधया दशमं नवमस्येव वेद चेद विरुद्धता. There is no contradiction if, by negating the idea that one is unhappy, one knows oneself to be the innermost self, that is Brahman, like the Boni, who knew himself to be the 10th by negating the false motion that he was the 9th. नित्यमुक्तत्वविज्ञानं वाक्याद् भवति नान्यतः वाक्यार्थस्यापि विज्ञानं पदार्थस्मृतिपूर्वकम् अन्वयव्यतिरेकाभ्यां पदार्थः स्मर्यते ध्रुवम् एवं निर्दुःखमात्मानम् अक्रियं प्रतिपद्यते. It is from the Sentence only and from nothing else that one knows oneself to be ever free. Brahman. The meaning of the sentence is known from the knowledge of the implied meanings of the words. These meanings again are surely understood by the method of agreement and contrariety. Thus one knows oneself to be free from pain and action. सदेवेत्यादिवाक्येभ्यः प्रमा स्फुटतरा भवेत् दशमस्त्वमसीत्यस्माद्यथैवं प्रत्यगात्मनि प्रबोधेन यथा स्वाप्नं सर्वदुःखं निवर्तते प्रत्यगात्मधिया तद्वद्दुःखित्वं सर्वदात्मनः. The right knowledge of self Brahman becomes manifest from sentences such as that thou art, like the knowledge acquired from the sentence you are the tenth. The false conception of pain with regard to the self vanishes from ever when the right knowledge of the self Brahman arises, like all kinds of pain experienced in dream which come to an end as soon as one wakes up. कृष्णलादौ प्रमा जन्म तदन्यार्थाद् मृदुत्वतः तत्त्वमस्यादिवाक्येषु न त्वेवमविरोधतः. The knowledge that they have been cooked does not arise in the case of gold particles, etc., as they do not become soft. They are made hot by boiling them for the purpose of producing an unseen result in connection with sacrifices. It is not a fact that right knowledge does not arise from sentences like that thou art. For there is no such contradiction here as in the case of gold particles. वाक्ये तत्त्वमसीत्यस्मिन् ज्ञातार्थं तदसिद्वयम् त्वमर्थे सत्यसाहाय्याद् वाक्यं नोत्पादयेत् प्रमाम्. The meanings of the two words that and art in the sentence thou art that are well known. It does not produce right knowledge for want of help when the implied meaning of the word thou is not known. तत्त्वमोस्तुल्यनीडार्थमसीत्येतत्पदं भवेत्. The word art is used in order to show that the two words thou and that are in the same predicament. तत्शब्दः प्रत्यगात्मार्थस्तत्शब्दार्थस्त्वमस्तथा दुःखित्वा प्रत्यगात्मत्वं वारयेतामुभावपि. Being in the same predicament with the word thou, the word that comes to mean the innermost self. Similarly, being in the same relation with the word that, the word thou comes to mean the same thing as the word that. Thus, in relation to each other, the two words show that the innermost self is not unhappy and that Brahman is not other than the self, as in the case of gold particles. एवं च नेति नेत्यर्थं गमयेतां परस्परं. Thus both of them in conjunction express the same meaning. A being, one and indivisible, of the nature of bliss, self, Brahman. as is implied by the sentence not this, not this. एवं तत्त्वमसीत्यस्य गम्यमाने फले कथम् अप्रमाणत्वमस्योक्ता क्रियापेक्षत्वमुच्यते. Why do you say that the sentence is not an evidence regarding the knowledge of Brahman and depends on an action in order to produce the same knowledge, as the result produced by the sentence that thou art is the knowledge, right knowledge regarding self Brahman. तस्मादाद्यन्तमध्येषु कुर्वीते तद्विरोध्यतः न कल्पामो श्रुतत्वाच्च श्रुतत्यागोऽप्यनर्थकः. We do not therefore admit the injunction of an action in the beginning, end, and the middle. At the time of the first teaching of the sentence that thou art, at the time when direct knowledge of self Brahman has been achieved, at the time of understanding the implied meaning of the words by the method of agreement and contrariety. For it is contradictory and not met with in the Vedas. Not only so, we have in that case to give up what is there in them, and that would be harmful. यथानुभूयते तृप्तिर्भुजे वाक्यान्न गम्यते वाक्यस्य विधृतिस्तद्वद् घोषकृत्पायसी क्रिया. Objection. The bliss of liberation is not obtained by ascertaining the meaning of the sentence. It is not like the satisfaction which is felt by eating. Just as boiled milk rice cannot be prepared from cow dung, so the direct knowledge of Brahman cannot be produced simply by ascertaining the meaning of the sentence. सत्यमेव मनात्मार्थ वाक्यात् पारोक्षबोधनम् प्रत्यगात्मनि न त्वेवं संख्या प्राप्तिवदध्रुवम्. Reply. In direct knowledge, it is true, is the result produced by the sentences regarding the non-self, but it is not so in the case of those regarding the innermost self. It is on the other hand direct and certain knowledge, like that in the case of the 10th boy. स्वयं वेद्यत्वपर्यायस्वप्रमाणकैष्यतां निवृत्तावहमसिद्धस्वात्मनोऽनुभवश्चनः. Therefore accept the self as self-evident, which means the same thing as self-knowable. The knowledge of the innermost self, according to us, thus becomes possible when the ego vanishes. It vanishes when one is taught that thou art. बुद्धीनां विषयो दुःखं नो यस्य विषया मताः कुतोऽस्य दुःखसम्बन्धो दृशे स्यात् प्रत्यगात्मनः. Pain is a property belonging to the intellect, that is the ego. How can it therefore belong to the innermost self, which is of the nature of pure consciousness and not connected with pain? धृषिरेवानुभूयेत स्वेनैवानुभवात्मना तदा भासतया जन्म धियोऽस्यानुभवस्मृतः. The witness is known by itself. It requires in order to be known no other knowledge, which is of the nature of knowledge only. It is the birth of the modification of the intellect, pervaded by the reflection of consciousness. That is what is known to be the knowledge of the self. That is, I am Brahman. अशनायादिनिर्मुक्तसिद्धो मोक्षस्तुमेव सः श्रोतव्यादितवेत्ते तद्विरुद्धं कथमुच्यते. How can you speak of the hearing, etc., of the self on your part, which is a contradiction? For a man cannot be the actionless Brahman and at the same time the agent of hearing, etc. Which is contradiction when you are taught to be the eternally existing liberation, Brahman, free from hunger, etc. सेत्स्यतीत्येव चेत् तत्स्यात् श्रवणादि तदा भवेत् मोक्षस्यानित्यतैवं स्याद् विरोधे नान्यथा वचः. Hearing would be necessary if liberation were to be brought about, but it would be transitory. In that case, the sentence therefore can have no other meaning which involves contradiction. Example, the iteration of the idea I am Brahman. श्रोत्रो श्रोतव्ययोर्भेदो यदिष्टः स्याद् भवेदिदम् इष्टार्थकोप एवं स्यात् न युक्तं सर्वथा वचः. The repetition of the idea I am Brahman might be possible if there were a difference between the hearer and the aspirant. The self, that is Brahman, and what is to be heard, but the desired meaning would be wronged in that case, that the individual self is Brahman. Therefore the sentence becomes unreasonable, that is, loses authority according to that view. सिद्धो मोक्षो हमित्येव ज्ञात्वात्मानं भवेत् यदि चिकीर्षुर्यः सम्मूढात्मा शास्त्रं चोद्घाटयत्यपि. Knowing that one is eternally existing liberation, one who desires to perform actions. Example, the reiteration of the idea I am Brahman for the objector's contention, see earlier verses, is a man of clouded intellect and nullifies the scriptures. Nahi siddhasya kartavyam sakaryasya na siddhata ubhayalambanam kurvan atmanam vanchayatyapi. The knowing oneself, for knowing oneself to be Brahman, one has no duty to perform, nor can one be a knower of Brahman when one has duties to perform. One deceives oneself by having recourse to both sides. सिद्धो मोक्षस्त्वमित्येतद्वस्तुमात्रं प्रदर्श्यते श्रोतुस्तथात्वविज्ञाने प्रवृत्तिः स्यात् कथं त्विति. Objection. A reality is only pointed to, but no injunction is given when one is told that thou art eternally existing liberation, Brahman. How can the hearer apply himself to know that he is so without being enjoined? कर्ता दुःख्यहमस्मीति प्रत्यक्षेणानुभूयते कर्ता दुःखी च मा भूवमिति यत्नो भवेत् ततः. It is known by perceptual evidence that one is an agent and experiencer of pain, and then there is an effort so that one may not remain so. तद्विज्ञानाय युक्त्यादि कर्तव्यं श्रुतिरब्रवीत् कर्तृत्वाद्यनुवादेन सिद्धत्वानुभवाय तु. The Shruti therefore restates the agency, etc., which people are conscious of on the part of the people and enjoins duties such as reasoning, etc., in order that they may know and feel that they are eternally existing Brahman. Nirdukho nishkriyo kama siddho moksho hamityaphi गृहीत्वैव विरुद्धार्थमादध्यात् कथमेव सः. Reply. How can one accept a contradictory meaning from the sentence which is the only right evidence after knowing that one is eternally existing liberation which is free from unhappiness, activity and desires? सकामः सक्रियो सिद्ध इति मेऽनुभवः कथम् अतो मे विपरीतस्य तद्भवान् वक्तुमर्हति. Objection. You should say why I, though of the nature of Brahman, an opposite nature, should feel that I have desires and activities and I am not Brahman. इह एव घटते प्रश्नो न मुक्तत्वानुभूतये प्रमाणेन विरोधी यस्सूत्रार्थः प्रश्नमर्हति. Reply. A question on this subject, that is, why one feels unhappy though one is Brahman, according to the evidence of the sentence, is reasonable, but it is not reasonable to ask why one is free. It is only a thing contrary to evidences. Example, the sentence that thou art. That should be questioned. Aham nirmukta ityeva sadasi ityanyamaanajah pratyakshābhāsajanyatvad dukkhitvam prashnamarhati. The knowledge that one is free arises from a different evidences, different from perceptual evidence and so on. Namely, the evidence that thou art arising from fallacious perceptual evidence. Unhappiness deserves an explanation. पृष्ठमाकाङ्क्षितं वाच्यं दुःखाभावमभीप्सितम्. One should be told what one asks and wants to know, and the inquirer desires to know liberation, the self, which is free from unhappiness. Katham hi dam nivartet dukkham sarvatmana mama iti prashnanurupam yad vachyam dukkha nivartakam. That liberation due to self-knowledge, which removes unhappiness, should be told by the teacher to the disciple according to his question, inquiring how his unhappiness might be removed altogether. Shrute svatmanina shanka pramanye sati vidyate tasmadatma vimuktatvam pratyayayati tadvachah वक्तव्यस तथार्थम स्यात् विरोधे सति केनचित्. There can be no doubt about what the Shrutis prove, as they are an independent source of knowledge. The words of Shrutis therefore produce the conviction that one is free. So it should be said that such is the meaning of the Shrutis, as it has been proved that they do not contradict any other source of knowledge. इतोऽन्योऽनुभवः कश्चिदात्मनो नोपपद्यते अविज्ञातं विजानतां विज्ञातारमिति श्रुतेः. The knowledge of the self different from what has been said before is unreasonable on the authority of the Shrutis. Its It is unknown to those who know it, and who will know the knower. त्वं पदार्थविवेकाय संन्यासः सर्वकर्मणां साधनत्वं व्रजत्येव शान्तो दान्तानुशासनात्. The renunciation of all actions in order to know the implied meaning of the word thou becomes the means to self-knowledge according to the teaching, controlling the internal and external senses. त्वमर्थं प्रत्यगात्मानं पश्येदात्मानमात्मनि वाक्यार्थं तथा आत्मानं सर्वं पश्यति केवलम्. One should know the self, the innermost one, the implied meaning of the word thou in the combination as its witness of the body and the senses. One then knows the pure self to be Brahman, the all-comprehensive principle, and that is the meaning of the sentence that thou art. सर्वमात्मेति वाक्यार्थे विज्ञातेस्य प्रमाणतः असत्वे ह्यन्यमानस्य विधिस्तं योजयेत् कथम्. How can one be enjoined to perform a duty when the meaning of the sentence, namely one is Brahman, is known by one according to the right source of knowledge, the Shrutis, inasmuch as no, they are then all proved to be unreal. No other source of knowledge can then exist for one. तस्माद् वाक्यार्थविज्ञानादोर्ध्वं कर्मविधिर्भवेत् न हि ब्रह्मास्मि कर्तेति विरुद्धे भवतो धियौ. No action can therefore be enjoined on one when one has known the meaning of the sentence. For the two contradictory ideas, I am Brahman and I am an agent, cannot exist together. ब्रह्मास्मीति च विद्येयं नैव कर्तेति बाध्यते सकामो बद्ध इत्येवं प्रमाणाभासजातया शास्त्रात् ब्रह्मासि नान्योऽहमिति बुद्धिर्भवेत् दृढा यदा युक्ता तदैवं धीर्यथा देहात्मधीरिति. That one is Brahman is the right knowledge. It is not negated by the false conception that one is an agent, has desires, and is bound arising from fallacious evidences. This false knowledge, that is, I am an agent, like the identification, the idea I am a man of the self with the body, becomes unreasonable when the knowledge that one is Brahman and not other than it is firmly grasped according to the teachings of the scriptures. Sabhayadabhayam praptastadartham yatate chayah sapunah sabhayam gantum swatantraschenna gacchati. A man who tries to remain free from fear after going to a place devoid of it, from one full fear does not, if independent, go to a place of fear again. यथेष्टाचरणप्राप्तिस्सन्न्यासादिविधौ कुतः पदार्थाज्ञानबुद्धस्य वाक्यार्थानुभवार्थिनः. How can there be the possibility of wrong conduct on the part of one on whom renunciation, etc., for objection, including the injunction of hearing, reflecting, and meditating on the self, are enjoined who is awakened on knowing the implied meanings of the words that and thou, and aspiring. Therefore, wrong conduct is impossible on one's part as one's mind is occupied with the attempt. For one again who has rightly comprehended the meaning of the sentence, wrong conduct is of course absolutely impossible. Implied meanings of the words and aspiring after the comprehension of the meanings of the sentence that thou art. अतः सर्वमिदं सिद्धं यत्प्रागस्माभिरीरितम्. Everything, therefore, that we said before is substantiated. यो हि अस्माद्विरक्तस्य नासौ तस्मै प्रवर्तते. लोकत्रयाद्विरक्तत्वान् मोक्षो किमिति हते. One does not try to attain anything in which one has lost interest. Why will a man seeking, even one seeking liberation, is free from desires and efforts? How much more free is one who has obtained it? How will a man seeking liberation make any effort at all who has lost interest in all the three worlds? क्षुधया पीड्यमानोऽपि न विषं ह्यस्तुमिच्छति. मिष्टान्नध्वस्तदृढजानन्नामूढस्तं जिगत्सति. No one likes to eat poison, even if possessed by hunger. So no one who is not an idiot will knowingly wish to eat it when his hunger has been appeased by eating sweetmeats. वेदान्तवाक्यपुष्पेभ्यो ज्ञानामृतमधुत्तमम् उज्जहारादिवद्यो नस्तस्मै सद्गुरवे नमः. I bow down to my teacher, a knower of Brahman, who collected for us the nectar of knowledge from the Vedantas, like a bee collecting the best honey from flowers. Thus completed 18th chapter. Now 19th chapter. अथात्मन मनस्संवाद प्रकरणम. Chapter 19. A conversation between the self and the mind. प्रयोज्य तृष्णा ज्वरनाशकारणं चिकित्सितं ज्ञानविरागभेषजं न याति कामज्वरसन्निपातजां शरीरमालां शतयोगदुःखिताम्. One does not meet with the distress caused by a series of hundreds of bodies, which has its origin in a swoon due to the fever of desires, if one places oneself under the treatment in which medicines are knowledge and dispassion, the causes of the destruction of the fever of desires mentioned before. अहं ममेति त्वमनर्थमीहसे परार्थमिच्छन्ति तवान्य ईहितं. न तेऽर्थबोधो न हि मेऽस्ति चार्थिता ततश्च युक्तश्च मयैव ते मनः. O my mind, you indulge in vain ideas like me and mine. Your efforts according to others, Sankhyas, are for one, the Purusha, the self, according to the Sankhyas, one other than yourself. You have no consciousness of things, and I have no desire of having anything. It is therefore proper for you to remain quiet. यतो न चान्यः परमात् सनातनात् सदैव तृप्तो हमतो न मेऽर्थिता. सदैव तृप्तश्च न कामये हितं यतस्वचेतः प्रशमायते हितम्. As I am no other than the Supreme Eternal One, I am always contented and have no desires. Always contented, I desire no welfare for myself, but I wish your welfare. Try to make yourself quiet, O mind. षडूर्मिमाला व्यतिवृत्तये यः स एव चात्मा जगतश्च न श्रुतेः प्रमाणतश्चापि मया प्रवेद्यते मुथैव तस्माच्च मनस्तवेहितम्. One who is by nature beyond the six continual waves: hunger, thirst, the properties of the vital force; grief, delusion of the mind; old age and death of the body, is, according to the evidence of the Shrutis, the self of us and the universe. This is what I know from other sources of knowledge also. Your efforts are therefore all in vain. त्वयि प्रशान्ते नहि चास्ति भेदधीर्यतो जगन्मोहमुपैति मायया ग्रहो हि माया प्रभवस्य कारणं ग्रहाद् विमोके नहि सास्ति कस्यचित्. Therefore, there is no idea of difference left deluding people through wrong notions when you are merged in ignorance, that is, in deep sleep. For the cause of all wrong notions is the perception of the reality of difference. These wrong notions vanish as soon as one is free from this perception. न मेऽस्ति मोहस्तव चेष्टितेन हि तव चेष्टितेन हि प्रबुद्धतत्त्वस्त्वसितो ह्य विक्रियः न पूर्वतत्त्वोत्तरभेदता हि नो वृथा एव तस्माच्च मनस्तवेहितम्. I am not deluded by your efforts, for I have known the truth and I am free from all bondages and change. I have no difference in the conditions preceding the knowledge of truth and succeeding it. Your efforts, O mind, are therefore useless. यतश्च नित्यो हमतो न चान्यथा विकारयोगे हि भवेदनित्यता सदा प्रभातो हमतो हि चाद्वयो विकल्पितं चाप्यसदित्यवत् स्थितम्. As I am eternal, I am not otherwise. Transitoriness is due to the connection with changes. I am always self-effulgent and therefore without a second. It is ascertained that everything created by the mind is non-existent. अभावरूपं त्वमसीह हे मनो निरीक्षमाणो न हि युक्तितो स्थिता सतो ह्यनाशादसतोऽप्यजन्मतो द्वयं च चेतस्तव नास्ति तिष्यते. Scrutinized through the reasoning that reality is never destroyed and unreality never born. You have no real existence. You are therefore, O my mind, non-existent in the self. Having both birth and death, you are accepted as non-existent. द्रष्टा च दृश्यं च तथा च दर्शनं भ्रमस्तु सर्वस्तव कल्पितो हि सः दृश्यैश्च भिन्नं न हि दृश्यमीक्षते स्वपन् प्रबोधेन तथा न विद्यते विकल्पना वापि तथा त्वया भवेदवस्तु योगात्तदलातचक्रवत् न शक्तिभेदोऽस्ति यतो न चात्मना ततो द्वयत्वं श्रुतिनो वसीयते. As everything, the seer, seeing and the seen, is a false notion superimposed by you, and as no object of perception is known to have an existence independent of that of the self, the self is one only. When this is so, the self in the state of deep sleep, the non-dual self only exists in deep sleep, does not differ from itself when in waking or dream, unreal like the circular when it is moved round, form of a burning torch, superimposition, also like the seer, seen and the seen. has no existence independent of that of the non dual self. The oneness of the self is ascertained from the Shrutis, as the self has no division within itself on account of different powers, and as it is not different in different bodies. मिथश्च भिन्ना यदि ते हि चेतना क्षयस्तु तेषां परिमाणयोगतः ध्रुवो भवेद्भेदवतां हि दृष्टतो जगत्क्षयश्चापि समस्तमोक्षतः. If according to you souls were mutually different and so limited by one another, they would meet with destruction, as all such things are seen to come to an end. Again, all being liberated, the whole world would meet with extinction. न मेऽस्ति कश्चिन्न च सोऽस्मि कस्यचित् यतो द्वयोऽहं न हि चास्ति कल्पितम् अकल्पितश्चास्मि पुरा प्रसिद्धितो विकल्पनाया द्वयमेव कल्पितम्. There is no one who belongs to me, nor is there anyone to whom I belong, as I am without a second. The world which is superimposed does not exist. My existence, the final substratum of all superimposition, being known to be anterior to superimposition, I am not superimposed. It is duality only that is so. विकल्पना चाप्यभवेन विद्यते सदन्यदित्येव मतो न नास्तिता यतः प्रवृत्ता तव चापि कल्पना पुरा प्रसिद्धेर्न च तद्विकल्पितम्. The unborn self, the substratum of all superimposition, can never be regarded as non-existent, because there cannot be the superimposition of existence or non-existence on it. What exists prior to your coming into apparent existence and on which you yourself are superimposed cannot itself be superimposed. असद्वयं हि यद् असद्वयं तेऽपि हि यद्यदीक्षते न दृष्टमित्येव न चैव नास्तिता यतः प्रवृत्ता सदसद्विकल्पना विचारवद्वापि तथा द्वयं च सत्. The duality pervaded by you is unreal. That it is not seen is no reason that the self does not exist. That from which the wrong notions of existence and non-existence proceed must exist. That is, are superimposed on it. And just as a deliberation ends in a conclusion, so all things superimposed have a final substratum in the really existing and non-dual self. सदभ्युपेतं भवतोपकल्पितं विचारहेतोर्यदि तस्य नास्तिता विचारहानाच्च तथैव संस्थितं न चेत् तदिष्टं नितरां सदिश्यते. If the duality created by you and assumed by us to be real, so that an investigation of the truth might be possible, were non-existent, a void, truth would remain unascertained, owing to the investigation becoming impossible. The existence, non-dual existence, which is common to all dual phenomena, must be accepted as real, but excluding one another, phenomena themselves are not persistent in their existence and are therefore unreal. The existence of a reality must be accepted as a matter of course if an unascertained nature of truth is to be desirable. Is not desirable. Truth is not desirable. असत्समं चैव सजित्यपीति चेद नर्थवत्वान्नरशृङ्गतुल्यतः अनर्थवत्वं तु सतीह कारणं न चैव तस्मान्न विपर्ययन्यथा. Objection. What is called real in the Vedas is, as a matter of fact, unreal, like a human horn, as it does not serve. In the opposite case, it becomes momentary according to the objector. Serve any purpose. Reply. That a thing serves no purpose is no reason why it should be unreal, and that a thing serves some purpose is no reason, on the other hand, why it should be real. असिद्धतश्चापि विचारकारणाद्वयं च तस्मात् प्रसृतिं च मायया श्रुते स्मृतेश्चापि तथा हि युक्तितः प्रसिद्ध्यति इत्थं न तु युज्यतेऽन्यथा. Your inference is wrong because reality serves some purpose, as it is the subject matter of deliberation and also the source of all duality, proceeding from it under the influence of Maya, according to the Shrutis, the Smritis and reason. Thus it is reasonable that the self, though changeless, serves some purpose. Otherwise, that is as a matter of reality, it is not reasonable that a thing, either permanent or momentary, serves any purpose. विकल्पनाच्चापि विधर्मकं श्रुतैः पुराः प्रसिद्धैश्च विकल्पतोऽद्वयः न चेति नेतीति यथा विकल्पितं निषिध्यते त्राप्यवशेषसिद्धये. According to the Shruti, it is of a nature contrary to that of superimposition. This one is without a second, as it is also known to have an eternal existence, even prior to all superimposition, unlike everything superimposed on it, which is negated on the evidence of the Shruti. Not this, not this. It is not negated and therefore left over. अकल्पितेऽप्येवमजे द्वयेक्षरे विकल्पयन्तः सदसच्च जन्मभिः स्वचित्तमाया प्रभवं च ते भवं जरां च मृत्युं च नियान्ति सन्ततम्. Those who, owing to false notions in their own minds, superimpose the ideas of existence, non-existence, etc., qualified, non-qualified, agent, non-agent, and so on the self, which is not itself superimposed and is birthless, imperishable, and without a second, always meet with birth, old age, and death as different kinds of beings. भवाभवत्वं तु न चेदवस्थितिर्न चास्य चान्यस्थितिजन्मनान्यथा सतो ह्यसत्वादसतश्च सत्वतो न च क्रियाकारकमित्यतोऽप्यजम्. Duality can have no reality if both its birth and absence of birth are denied owing to the possibility of contradictions. Again, it cannot have its origin to another thing, either real or unreal, for in that case, being the origin of duality, reality would become unreal and unreality real. For all material causes are changeable and therefore unreal. For a material cause cannot but have some existence, it cannot be a void. Hence the nature of actions and their instruments regarding the production of duality also cannot be ascertained. It is for these reasons that the self is ascertained to be unborn. अपूर्वदिष्टं यदि वास्यकारकं न किञ्चिदन्यन्नो नास्त्यकारकं न किञ्चिदन्यन्ननुनास्तकारकं न किञ्चिदन्यन्ननु नास्त्यकारकम् सतो विशेषादसतश्च सच्युतौ तुलान्तयोर्यद्वदनिश्चयान्न हि. If the instruments in connection with the birth of duality is considered to be devoid of any action, whatever there will be nothing which will not be an instrument. And if they are considered to have the power of action, they will not be instruments, for they can be acting neither in the state of reality nor of unreality, as both these states are without any particulars and will always produce effects or never produce any. Neither, if you argue that reality or unreality may have the power of action, when they deviate from the previous states of reality or unreality. Neither can they become instruments at the time, nor can they be instruments after such deviation, for deviation itself being an effect requires something to produce it, that again something else, and so on. There will be thus regressus ad infinitum. At the time of their deviation from their original states of reality or unreality. For in that case, the distinction between the nature of the cause and that of the effect cannot be ascertained, like the relation of cause and effect between the two ends moving up and down of the beam of a balance. न चेत् स इष्टस्तदसद्विपर्ययः कथं भवस्यात् सदसद्व्यवस्थितौ विभक्तमेतद्द्वयमप्यवस्थितं न जन्म तस्माच्च मनो हि कस्यचित्. If the reversal of reality and unreality is not desirable, how can anything owe its origin to them which are of a fixed nature? For both of them stand without having any connection with each other. Nothing, therefore, O my mind, is born. In the previous verse, a change of condition in reality and unreality was assumed, but as a matter of fact, there is no such change. अथाभ्युपेत्यापि भवं तवेच्छतो ब्रवीमि नार्थस्तव चेष्टितेन मे नहान वृद्धि न यतः सतो भवोऽन्यतो वा यदि वा स्थिता तयोः. Even when assuming the birth of things, if you like so, I say your efforts serve me no purpose. For not existing in the self, gain or loss cannot be there, either uncaused or due to any cause. Even assuming that they exist in the self, it is a fact that your efforts are of no use to me. In the case of their existence, your effort to produce them is futile. ध्रुवाय नित्याश्च न चान्ययोगिनो मिथश्च कार्यं न च तेषु युज्यते अतो न कस्यापि हि किञ्चिदिष्यते स्वयं च तत्त्वं न निरुक्तिगोचरम्. Things either immutable or transitory cannot have any relation with other things or with themselves. Therefore, it is not reasonable that they should have any effects. So, nothing belongs to anything else. The self itself is also not directly within the scope of words. This is stated in the answer of the objection that being an object of Vedic evidence, the self is related with the Vedas. Samam tu tasmat satatam vibhatavat. द्वयाद्विमुक्तं सदसद्विकल्पितात् निरीक्ष्य युक्त्या श्रुतितस्तु बुद्धिमान् शेषनिर्वाणमुपैति दीपवत्. A wise man immediately meets with the complete extinction of bondage, like the extinguishing of a lamp, when he knows through reasoning and shrutis the self, which is the same in all conditions, always of the nature of self-effulgent consciousness and free from duality, fancied to be existing or non-existing. अवेद्यमेकं यदनन्यवेदिनां तु तार्किकाणां च सुवेद्यमन्यथा निरीक्ष्य चेत्थं त्वगुणग्रहो गुणं न याति मोहं ग्रहदोषमुक्तितः. Knowing the one bereft of the gunas, which is unknowable, according to those who know it to be not different from the self and which is very well knowable. According to those fallaciously argumentative people who wrongly know it to be an object of knowledge, a man, thus freed from the gunas, becomes liberated from the bondage of false notions and is never deluded again. अतोऽन्यथा न ग्रहनाशैष्यते विमोहबुद्धिर्ग्रह एव कारणं ग्रहोऽप्यहेतुस्त्वनलस्त्वनिन्दनो यथा प्रशान्तिं परमां यथा तथा व्रजेत. False notions cannot be negated in any way other than thus knowing the self. It is these wrong notions that are the causes of delusion. These notions, bereft of their causes, ignorance, come to an absolute end. Their cause, ignorance, come to an absolute end. Like fire bereft of fuel, when knowledge is achieved. विमथ्यवेदो दधितः समुद्धृतं सुरैर्महाब्धेस्तु यथा महात्मभिः तथामृतं ज्ञानमिदं हि यैः पुरा नमो गुरुभ्यः परमेक्षितं च यैः. इति श्रीमत्परमहंसपरिव्राजकाचार्य श्रीगोविन्दभगवत्पूज्य शिष्यस्य श्रीशङ्करभगवतः कृतिः सकलवेदोपनिषत्सारोपदेशसाहस्री समाप्ता. I bow down to the teachers, the great souls who realized the supreme truth and gathered from the ocean of the Vedas this knowledge described in the present book, like gods who churned the great ocean in ancient time and gathered nectar. A man, here ends 1,000 teachings, the substance of all the Upanishads written by the all-knowing Shankara, the teacher and wandering Paramahamsa, a man who has renounced worldly actions and has the surest knowledge that he is not different from Brahman and that the universe is unreal, wandering from place to place for the spiritual benefit of people. Paramahamsa, the disciple of Govinda, worthy of adoration. Thus ends 1,000 teachings, Upadesha Sahasri. Om Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Shri Sitaram Chandrarpanamastu.